Welcome back. You're watching Gravitas. A lot has been said and written about cultural ties between India and Iran. How our civilizations are the same in many ways, how our tongues savor similar foods. But when tongues start to wag, the problem begins. And the tongue of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is wagging in quick succession, it seems. So much so that he has harped upon Kashmir twice in a week's time. And believe me, it's in bad taste. And before we tell you what Khamenei has said, here's what you should know. India is the second biggest importer of oil from Iran. India did business with Iran despite paralyzing sanctions imposed by the United Nations and the United States. And India and Iran have common interests in the development of the Chabahar port. Of course, the cultural ties and Iranian films finding audience in India and whatnot. But coming back to the Supreme Leader's comments, let's not forget that Iran also has a president in Hassan Rouhani. He has been recently re-elected. He's widely accepted as a moderate voice. But let us tell you this, no president can go against the Supreme Leader in the state of Iran. And what this means is that Khamenei has the last word. And Iran's Supreme Leader has spoken, as we told you earlier, twice in a week. He has called upon the Islamic world to support the oppressed people of the world. And he believes that Muslims in Kashmir are facing oppression. He has even declared everyone should openly support Kashmiris. He is sowing the seeds of unrest in the name of Islam, some would say, in Bahrain, Yemen, Myanmar, and now in Kashmir. And many would ask, why is Iran turning its back on India? It's an open secret that Iran is no friend of Israel. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has joined hands with Benjamin Netanyahu to combat terror, and perhaps that is why Tehran is rattled, or some in Tehran certainly are. And with me is Talmiz Ahmad. He is a former Indian ambassador to many countries, one of which is Iran, and knows Saudi Arabia as well, and knows the region very well. Good evening, sir, and good to have you on the show here. My first question to you is, what do you think is the trigger? Is it the visit to Israel? What is...
I don't think it is the visit to Israel. He made the first remark well before the visit. With deep respect to the Supreme Leader, I must say that he is increasingly irrelevant. He is ill. There are expectations that he will be succeeded shortly. There are already discussions in Iran as to who could take his place. He is the spiritual leader of the country. It is a complicated political
but
situation.
He has a lot of sway.
He has tremendous political power. He has embarrassed his own president from time to time. Even in the context of the recent presidential elections, he had openly supported an opposition candidate against President Rouhani. So I would suggest with respect that we should not get overly agitated at this point about these remarks. These are the rantings of an old man who is well past his prime. And I think this is not the opinion of the government of Iran. It has not been articulated by the president or by the foreign minister.
But the president has not even said that it is...
There is no way the president in their system can publicly contradict the Supreme Leader. The Supreme Leader is the spiritual leader. It's called Supreme Leader or Rahbar. It's a complicated situation. It's a complicated scenario. And we have to respect their political order as it is, but I do not believe that the Supreme Leader has articulated the views of the government of Iran, which are very clearly pro-India.
So you're saying that India should let it pass and pay no attention?
I agree with that. For example, if you see, he has talked about the Islamic world. The Islamic world, with respect to the Supreme Leader, is now raged against him and against his country. All the major Islamic countries in the neighborhood are actively hostile to Iran. So which Islamic world is he talking about? Which Islamic issues is he talking about? It just shows how disconnected he is from the rest of the world. He is really somebody I feel sorry for, but I don't believe that we should take it too seriously. These are some of the burdens that you have to carry when you have a complicated political system. See the antics of President Trump.
Yeah.
Do you think that many of his actions are presidential? Many of his remarks are presidential?
But he's the president of the United States of America, and you'll have to take whatever he's giving you.
No, every time, every political order throws up leaders that you have to accommodate up to a point.
Yeah.
You don't have to. I don't think India needs to get overly agitated. We have a very robust relationship with that country.
Chabahar isn't quite going the way the two sides would like
Yeah,
it to.
Chabahar is the agreement that we have had. We have invested a lot of money there already, and we are going to invest more. It is crucial for the promotion of our strategic interests. So I think that is where we should be really focused, rather than these loose remarks of a seriously ill and tired individual.
All right, that's a good way to put it. Thanks very much, Talmiz Ahmed. Thank you for shedding light on this. The other country we're talking about here is, of course, China. President Xi Jinping has reached Hamburg for the G20 summit, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi also headed there in about a day's time. And they are looking at a difficult situation along the border as well. There may be an opportunity to try and resolve this current standoff on Bhutan's Doklam Plateau. China claims it has done nothing wrong and wants India to pull back the troops it has deployed on the plateau.
This is not your area.
对于印方的有关表态，我想指出的是，解决边界问题符合中印两国的根本利益。 也是双方一直在努力实现的一个战略目标。事实上，两国一直在通过边界问题特别代表会晤的机制，来讨论边界问题的解决办法，同时也共同采取了措施，维护了边境地区的和平与安宁。
So what is this standoff? The Chinese do not want to look at what triggered the current standoff. China's road construction in the Doklam Plateau was in Bhutanese territory. India intervened after Bhutan's attempt to stop Chinese road construction and did not succeed. Under a bilateral treaty, both sides are required to consult with each other in the event of such a development. India's own security was also compromised by the Chinese road building. And this is where the Doklam Plateau is. It's the Chumbi Valley area. It borders the Chumbi Valley in China. The Chinese road building was being done on Bhutanese territory. The road would have come all the way down from the Chumbi Valley Tri-Junction, which is only 500 kilometers from India's Siliguri corridor. And that threatened India's lifeline in the northeast. It's also clear that at some point China will build a railway line in addition to this road, which further improves its ability to move troops and equipment faster and in greater numbers. The tensions on the mountains matches China's muscle flexing in the Indian Ocean. More than a dozen naval ships, including submarines, destroyers and intelligence gathering vessels, have been sighted in the last 2 months alone. China claims the vessels are there as part of the periodic rotation of naval assets involved in anti-piracy patrols. But there's little doubt that the presence of submarines indicates a larger purpose: to gather as much data and information about the waters of the Indian Ocean for use in possible future operations. This is being called a game of dangerous brinkmanship. In fact, Prime Minister Modi, during his Russia visit recently, had said that not a single bullet had been fired along the border between India and China for 40 years. He perhaps jinxed it because within weeks of that, we're seeing this standoff that is well into its 20th day, and we see no signs of tensions easing, with China upping the ante. China is now making charges against India, saying that India is misleading the public by alleging that a road being constructed near the Sikkim border could endanger Delhi's access to the region, that it gives access to its 7 northeastern states. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has been repeatedly saying that this region is part of its territory according to a treaty signed in 1890 with Britain, when it was a colonial power. So that is the treaty China is talking about. Of course, India is a free country now, and there will be very few takers for a piece of paper that was signed in 1890. A lot of water has flown under the bridge since then, but China refusing to accept it at this point. Joining us this evening on Gravitas, Professor Swaran Singh from the School of International Studies at JNU. Good evening, Professor Singh. Where do you think this is heading?
between China and India.
We'll try and reconnect with him. China has been alleging that it's the Indian troops that are on its soil. Both Bhutan and India say the area in question is Bhutanese territory. So it's essentially their word against ours, and no sides refusing to back down at this point. India, remember, has a military presence in Bhutan. It says its troops approached a Chinese army unit that entered the Doklam area of the Himalayan nation on the 16th of June and tried to build a road. China's ambassador has also been saying that the Indian troops should, quote-unquote, unconditionally pull back to the Indian side. There is no question of a compromise. That's what the Chinese envoy told PTI only yesterday. And since then, we've seen some developments. Bhutan, remember, is one of the world's smallest countries. It has said that the construction of a road on its territory is a quote-unquote direct violation of agreements with China. Bhutan does not share diplomatic ties with China. And this is a very peculiar situation right now, with a border standoff continuing well into the fourth week, will begin tomorrow. I'm told Swaran Singh is back with us. Professor Singh, thank you for being with us on Gravitas. My question to you is, where do you think this is heading? It's been almost 3 weeks, the end of 3 weeks, and they seem to be upping the ante. They seem to be hardening their positions.
Obviously, China doesn't seem to be in a mood to compromise or even begin the dialogue. Because in principle, in international relations, whenever you wish to start a dialogue on a dispute, neither side should put any preconditions beforehand. So it seems Chinese are repeatedly pushing India to take the first step to move the forces backwards. And that is not the way a dialogue should begin in international relations. Fundamentally, Chinese are trying to build a road on a territory which Bhutan treats as its sovereign territory. And because of India's special relations with Bhutan, India gets involved into this. Of course, India also has security concerns with China coming that much closer to what we call chicken's neck area. So therefore, I think it is not apparent that whether Chinese are really willing to solve the problem. We are hoping that this Friday, when Prime Minister Modi meets President Xi Jinping, this issue will come for discussion, and perhaps some signal from the top will be given as to how to cool down this conflict between these two countries.
Right, that is what I wanted to ask you. But the tone being taken by the Chinese state-run media is not a very friendly one, and friendly is not the right word given the context. But look at the words they're using, and I'm quoting, India should be taught a bitter lesson. If it does not withdraw its troops with dignity, it will face the humiliation of them being kicked out. They are in no mood for reconciliation.
I think the media, particularly Global Times, has been really very aggressive. But that is understandable. What is not understandable is the comment by their ambassador in New Delhi. And of course, this constant demand by the spokesperson in Beijing that India should withdraw troops first. This doesn't give an indication that they are willing to start the dialogue and cool down the situation. Indeed, this is how Chinese are behaving with all their neighbors. And India, being the largest neighbor of China, perhaps has a certain onus on India to begin to coordinate with other neighbors. Otherwise, all other neighbors dealing at bilateral level would have very different way of dealing with Beijing. India perhaps can go beyond bilateral and begin to coordinate with other countries. We recently had an ASEAN dialogue in New Delhi.
Right.
I think we should also deal with ASEAN countries as to how they wish to respond, and also other countries like Russia, Japan, and Philippines, Vietnam, and other countries. Because this is a really attitude of a bully against a small country, thanks to the special relations that Bhutan has with India. Otherwise, Chinese would have really pushed around and done the way they wanted to do things. They are basically trying to expand Chumbi Valley so that they have better access to the chickens area in India. Whereas otherwise, between Bhutan and India's Sikkim, we can squeeze that area of China and will not allow Chinese to do any power projection from Chumbi Valley. So their intention is to expand, widen it. So they are willing to swap their territory of 269 square kilometers by giving Bhutanese about 500 kilometers and central north of Bhutan.
Right.
But Bhutanese have rejected it. Bhutanese have clearly said we don't agree to any such swap, and this territory belongs to Bhutan. And if that is the position Bhutan takes, India has to stand by that ally of India. They depend on India for their security in many ways.
Thank you for explaining the situation very well to our viewers. Professor Singh, thank you for joining us here on Gravitas. And we are completely out of time. Finally ending on a lighter note. For years, Israeli foreign policy experts have said that India treated their country like a mistress. They engaged in private but were not acknowledged in public. Today, Prime Minister Netanyahu said it was a marriage made in heaven. But it may be a crowded marriage because Netanyahu said the same for China only a few months back. Make what you will of it. We're leaving you with this. Thanks very much for watching.
Explains the fit, I would almost say the marriage, between Israeli technology and Chinese marketing and industrial capacity.
This is a cooperation. It's a marriage really made in heaven, but we're implementing it here on earth.